Hello everyone and welcome back to another VASAviation video. Today I'm going to be talking about and reviewing the near accident that we had in Nice airport here in France only a few days ago. And believe it or not, I am right now in Nice. I have landed just, 2 or 3 hours ago. And it's an airport that I know very well. I have been here quite a few times, landing and departing both directions, runway 04s and runways 22. And of course, we don't have any of the official information right now. Unfortunately, we don't have the audio available to listen to it, and we'll need to wait for the official reports. But based on my experience, and I have been to this airport quite a few times already, we'll be reviewing some of the aspects that may have contributed to the near disaster. So first of all, I am very sorry for the audio quality and the video quality as well. I just got to the hotel room. This is what I got: my laptop and basic equipment. So also for the noise, I have a road right in front of the window. It's noisy, and the lighting, it sucks. So apologies for that. Today I wanted to record in the cockpit the landing daytime on runway 04 left. Unfortunately, they were operating with runways 22. So because I just wanted to show the perspective and the point of view of landing on runway 04 left. And I will get to that just in a second, because I have a video recorded by myself in the cockpit, nighttime, landing on 04 left. So you can see the perspective and kind of what we see in the cockpit, because I have just the GoPro there in the cockpit, and the quality is what it is. But just so you can see. Also, I will talk about the usual procedures that we use in Nice and the approaches. We have the RNP approach for both runways, and then we have a VPT, which is a visual prescribed track. It's kind of a final visual segment for the runway. That's the normal operation in Nice. They have an ILS for runway 04 left. I have never used it. I think they use it only for bad weather conditions, low visibility, and that kind of stuff. Every time I've come to Nice, I have used both the RNP VPT for runway 04 and the RNP plus VPT for runway 22. So here you can see I adapted our radar software for the United States just to work here in Europe. Of course, the data blocks and all the information on screen is not realistic to what the European controllers see on their radar scopes, but just so we can have a kind of a radar display here for the event. And we'll go through the approach plates and the approach charts for the RNP and the VPT runway 04 left here in just a second. But you can see the Lima Bravo Tango 586 right here is our subject aircraft. Again, we don't have the audio. We don't know if they were clear for the approach on runway 04 left or 04 right. Now, what I can tell you is runway 04 left is normally used for arrivals, and runway 04 right is normally used for departures. So when they clear you for the approach, they clear for the approach for the RNP, VPT, and they say the runway as well. And again, normally landing runway 04 left, departing runway 04 right. And here you can see on the radar, like Lima Bravo Tango 586 is going kind of a northbound heading just towards the bay. On the RNP, at some point, they will change. There is a point where you change from the RNP to the VPT. That is kind of the decision point, right, on a normal approach. If you are at minimums and you see the runway, you have visual contact with the runway, you continue and you change from RNP to VPT, and then you follow the VPT, which is the visual segment, but is visual prescribed track. So it's visual, but you cannot do whatever you want. You have to do visually what they tell you on the approach chart. And you can see here they are flying towards the coast. Let me just change it here to the satellite view so you can see better. You see the airport there. And at some point, and we'll go to the approach chart here in just a moment, they tell you to turn right and line up to either runway there, runway 04 left and 04 right. And just like I said, normally they use 04 left for landings, 04 right for departures, but normally, for some particular reasons, maybe they have you land on the other runway, on 04 right in this case. That's okay. It's visually, you just change your runway, or just, have the clearance from earlier, and you just plan to land on runway 04 right. We usually brief both, and we usually just keep in mind, hey, keep in mind if we change the runway last moment because of the previous departure, the previous arrival didn't vacate the runway in time, or whatever other reasons, and you have to change the runway. But normally 04 left is for landings, 04 right is for departures. At this precise time, EasyJet is lining up on runway 04 right for departure. So here you can see the approach RNP alpha to runways, both 04 left and 04 right. So we normally just receive vectors initially, then clear direct to Bisbo intersection. That's the waypoint, the intermediate fix. And from Bisbo, you are clear for the approach. The RNP alpha and the VPT alpha. They tell you clear for the approach, which means both of them. RNP alpha, then you follow the approach and follow the profile down to Mike November 04 alpha. That's kind of your decision point, your missed approach fix, or your missed approach point. At that point, if you see the runway, you have clearance for the approach, you go and you change to the VPT. And the VPT, as I said, is the visual prescribed track, which says that after Mike November 04 alpha, you continue on heading 354, and at that point, visually line up with either of the runway you're clear. At that point, you're handed off to tower frequency, and they will tell you continue approach or clear to land any of the runways. And now, what we do when we are doing this approach, and unfortunately that's something that I have not recorded in cockpit, but I will tell you, since this approach is not loaded into the FMS, we create it manually. So just create a heading 354 after Mike November 04 alpha, then 043 heading to the runway that we're expecting to land on. That at least backs up the visual segment. You can fly a visual, but of course you can back it up with some instrumentation just to apply more safety measures. So now here's a video that I recorded myself in cockpit about a year ago, landing nighttime in Nice on runway 04 left. Now, I remember that day runway 04 right was closed by NOTAM because, some construction in progress, or I can't remember, but runway 04 right was closed. So we were landing and taking off on runway 04 left. But just for the purpose, what I want with this video is to show you because the quality is more focused on the cockpit, to show you how bad the visibility is in nighttime generally, because when we're flying during the night, all lights appear the same. They can have different colors. We have different colors for the lights on the aircraft. We have red, we have green, we have white, we have the beacon, we have the strobes. They flash, some don't. And okay, but sometimes it's not quite easy to identify those lights, especially when you're landing at an airport with many lights. It's a big airport with lights on the runway, taxiways, on the ramps. It's quite difficult. Also, when you land on runway 04 left, you have downtown, you have it in front of you, behind the airport. So you're landing on 04 left, you have the airport with all the lights, and just behind the airport you have the city with all the lights as well. So identifying an aircraft on the runway from behind, because of course if you're landing face to face with an aircraft on the runway, you see it because those landing lights are really powerful. But now from behind, the nav lights and the beacon light and the strobe lights from behind, I can tell you that's difficult and that's not easy to identify. That's something we practice in the simulator as well, when the instructor suddenly has an aircraft go into the runway and you see it, and your decision is of course to go around. But sometimes you have some doubts, and even in real life you have some doubts as well when you're landing behind an aircraft on the runway because he's taking off or because he's just landed there, and sometimes you lose sight of that aircraft on the runway amongst all those lights on the ground. So it's quite difficult. You can see here in the video, which is continuing playing, that right now we're turning right and we are lining up on the runway. Again, the video, it has that quality and you have to live with it. But again, trust my word, sometimes it's not that easy to identify different parts of the airport and of course to identify an aircraft from behind. There are a lot of lights there on the ground. Once you get closer, you of course identify the runway and identify the poppy lights as well. When you're far away, it's quite difficult. I remember that day for the 04 ride, which was closed, I remember a really big cross in front of the threshold. I remember it was actually on the water. It was a illuminated cross on the water just in front of the runway. So of course, just in case you misidentify that runway, you have a big illuminated cross there to tell you, hey, this runway is closed. So that's for the landing there. And again, the GoPro doesn't make much justice on the quality, but still very complicated sometimes. And even when you're taxiing on the ground and you're taxiing behind an aircraft, especially for us in the private jets, I fly a Cessna Citation XLS Plus, which is kind of a small medium size corporate jet. When we're taxiing behind a big aircraft, which our face is approximately at the height of their engines, it's nighttime, it's difficult to see how far it is, and sometimes again you lose sight of it. If you get distracted with anything and you get inside of the cockpit, then you go outside again, you might have lost that aircraft in front of you until you get you get used to the lighting again and you identify again the aircraft and its lights on the wings, on the tail, on the back. Here you can see this is the approach that we did. It's 11th of August 2024, so it's more than a year ago already. But this is the approach that I recorded nighttime that you have just watched the video. This is the approach. You can see what it looks like on the ADS-B track. On the approach, then you continue with the heading, and at some point you turn right visually and you line up with the runway. You can see the runway here. And again, we don't know these Nuvolar aircraft if they were clear to land on runway 04 left or 04 right. If they were clear to land and the approach and everything was cleared for the approach on runway 04 left, then of course it was their mistake, misidentifying the runway, going to the wrong runway, not identifying the EasyJet on the runway there lined up, waiting for departure. And at the very last moment, they went around, climbed back up, and they received vectors, I think, and turned back inbound. Now, if they were cleared for runway 04 right, of course that was a controller mistake to line up at the EasyJet there and have the approach, the arrival also on that runway. Now, something that I also thought about is if they were clear for runway 04 left, does the tower there the controllers there in the tower have some kind of radar, because maybe they could have warned the pilots that, hey, you're going to the 04 right, confirm 04 right, 04 left, the kind of double check between pilots and controllers, just because, again, at nighttime it's quite easy to misidentify things, misidentify distances and all that. So again, I have never landed on 04 right, so I don't know the perspective on that side. If you really have all that space to the left of that runway, you can maybe think, hey, are we really on 04 left? Because we're too close to the water here, right? And here's the approach that we just did today. You can see here is 24 September 2025, one of the most beautiful approaches that you can do the entire Europe, I would say, or world. You have the RMP down to a point, then there you continue the VPT, and you have that left turn to line up with the, in this case, the 22 right, which is the inland runway used for landings, and the runway closer to the water is what they use for departures normally. Because actually today I have seen some aircraft land on 22 left. I don't know the reason behind it, but they use both as well. And then I saw the A380 from Emirates landing on 22 right. That was an impressive view. You can see there with the left turn, the city on the right, you have Monaco as well, you can see it, and you land there. It's a complex airport. And again, especially during nighttime, everything gets more complicated during nighttime, everything. So back to the radar here, now with flight radar 24, we can see that Lima Bravo Tango 586, after the right turn to final, yes, they are lined up with runway 04 right, and we have the EasyJet right there lining up on the runway, just waiting for takeoff clearance. And it was really close, actually. Yeah. I have never landed on runway 04 right, so I don't know the perspective on that precise moment right there on very short final. And again, we don't know if they were clear to land on that runway. So, but at that point, they went around, they climbed back up, and they were vectored back around. As always, waiting for the official information to be released. Authorities there in France, well, actually here, are working on it. They have the audio. They probably have the pilots as well there to explain what happened or what could have happened, and they will gather all that information, put it all together, and release at least a preliminary report, I guess. An airport that I visit quite usually. As a corporate pilot, we fly here quite often as well, because Monaco is right here. The passengers just get off the aircraft, go to the helicopter pad, take their helicopters, and go to Monaco. That's what we usually do here. Let me know what you think about it. It was really, really close. So hey, pay attention. Just pay attention and fly best you can. Thank you very much. Let me know in the comments what you think about it. And if you have any other information or more information that I have, or better information, probably yes, also let me know in the comments. Thank you very much, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye. 175 just out, 31 set up on Jupiter.